tuned in to Coder Conversations. Catch up with us at coderconvos.com or reach out to us at coderconversations@gmail.com. I'm Kevin, and joining us today is Devontae Moore, Senior Software Engineer. Welcome back to the show, man. It's been a second.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you for letting me come back, and I appreciate our first talk. So hopefully we'll have a good one.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. How's things been going, man? What's transpired since we last spoke?
So I ended up, I think when we last spoke, I had a full-time job with a company called Northbuilt. Learned a ton from their senior engineers. Um, they were like, you always see on LinkedIn they talk about rock stars and ninjas. Like these guys they were good. Like they were, like when I came into that job, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna show them what I had, and I instantly was humble. Like these guys had all kinds of experience. I worked with a guy named Chris, super full stack dev, like, and he was precise from all the way from CSS to back end, everything in between. So I was super humble, but it was good. I learned a ton. I learned how to write good code and not just working code, because with it before them I was just kind of stuck in this place of just getting things done. But they taught me how to get things done right and think like an engineer. Like, okay, I never understood the difference between like a fragile code that breaks because it's like, oh, you didn't think about this edge case, or all the different, even UI UX, right? Like disabling a button, like little things like that, like was just out of my wheelhouse, because I was just used to just grinding, finding stuff online, patching it together, got it to work. Okay, we're moving on. So they really taught me how to engineer actually good solid code. But I ended up getting let go from them. It was pretty tough. I ended up kind of job hopping. I actually went to the warehouse, did a little bit of that. But luckily, I ended up finding a job through a networking event I went to locally in Murfreesboro, and ended up hooking up with a guy named Sean Willis, and that's who I work with now with Burrow Dev Agency, where I'm actually senior engineer, um, kind of leading small teams of folks, and we're just over there. I'm doing a ton of stuff. And I'm glad I had that training that I had, because I'm able to transition that, and it's helping me be able to navigate different technologies like we were discussing earlier. I've worked on Angular apps with Laravel backends. I'm working on a WordPress app now and learning a lot about securing WordPress apps. I'm actually doing a security audit now and learning about security and how to layer your apps with different types of security, so it's not as vulnerable. I've gotten to web performance, just doing all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, man, I remember that you did have that period where you were out of coding and you had to kind of pivot for a little while. Like, can you explain like how that was and how was the mentality what was the mentality you had to get back into code? Because sometimes people leave and they don't come back.
well, if I'm being honest, it was rough. And we're men of faith, and I had my faith during that time, and that definitely helped. But I'll be honest, I'm not. Sometimes our faith is broken. Hold on one second. I think I have. Let me turn that off. Sometimes our faith is broken, but God is merciful. But that definitely, having that faith and just trusting that was going to be provided for one way or another. Sometimes that's all we have to do. Sometimes we complicate things as Christians, and sometimes the simplest things is just realize that God is going to provide for you regardless. We might not know how, when, where, but He does, and we just have to trust that He'll provide. And when I say provide, I even mean providing, let's say, not just the provision, but let's say that job comes with burdens and difficulties. He'll provide the grace to help you get over that as well.
Yeah, I kind of found like it's when you're in the industry, you can end up getting kind of arrogant, thinking like, okay, well, if this job goes away, there's another one right around the door that I can get super easy. And sometimes God takes it away from you and He parks you for a while, and you're not going to get that next job nearly as easily as you thought. And it makes you be grateful when He does give you that opportunity back.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So you're going into this new job. It seems like you're doing a lot more than just like front end or React development. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So essentially, I call it an end-to-end developer, where I'm all the way, building the front end. Of course, AI helps a lot with that, all the way to setting up like infrastructure and CI/CD for like a backend AWS, building an image for Kubernetes. I actually started that process for one project. It didn't get completed all the way, but what it did was it gave me a spark, and now I'm actually diving more into AWS. I'm actually taking a course by Adrian Contrell, where he's teaching me a lot. Some people may know that name. He's very polarizing, but his courses right now, as far the ones I'm taking are pretty, they're pretty valuable right now. So I'm hoping to be able to. I kind of want to be more of that kind of solutions engineer or product engineer, where I'm kind of thinking about high level. Of course, I want to be able, if I got to go micro to the granular to kind of fix bugs, I want to be able to do that. But going a little bit more high level and being able to kind of just build the product out from, like I said, from end to end, from the UI UX all the way to deploying it to AWS and being able to monitor the performance and being able to kind of figure out where the bottlenecks are, whether it's database queries, take being too slow. Maybe you got some nested for loop that's blocking the event loop in Node.js, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think it's really important now to not just have a single tool. Like maybe when you first get in the industry, you start off as the React guy, but it's always like good to kind of expand your tool house. And like you say, kind of, you don't necessarily always want to be stuck knee deep in the code. You want to be able to see the whole process end to end.
Yeah.
And that way, just say, let's just say the React work is complete on this project, and they don't, that's all you do. If they don't have another React project, then they're gonna have to let you go. But
Yeah.
if you can see the product end to end, you can jump to any other project.
Yeah. And I believe that's what's going to, I think that's the safest, right? Obviously, God's provision is top, but like even in Ecclesiastes, it talks about kind of diversification and, not letting your hand rest in the morning, but, doing something in the evening. So, and I feel like and actually, that's something I actually prayed on. And I feel like being in a position to where you can just solve multiple problems is really kind of a version of that. And like you said, it kind of keeps you, it's almost like, if you're someone that builds with your hands, if it's like if all you know is electrical, then if electrical market kind of goes down, then it's like, well, so do you. But if you know electrical and plumbing and this, and obviously that's a little bit hard to do, but but it's ideal, right? Is to have multiple skills and be able to have at least enough working knowledge to add value in different domains. And so that's really my goal.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, especially what God's pushing me to really do is become more of a leader, be in more of a leadership position, and not rely just on a single tool. Because a lot of times we get comfortable, like, okay, this is comfortable. I can do this pretty easy, and you stop. Your faith in God lessens, and you just have more faith in yourself because, okay, I've done this a million times. I know how to do this. So
Right.
God often pulls that comfort away from you and puts you on a higher level, and now you're struggling, and you're no longer just content with just yourself. Your mind is focused back on God. So I think that's interesting. Is just that progression of God elevating you, but it also increases your dependency on Him.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, getting yeah, as you go higher, like the burdens kind of arise. Reminds me of David when he was like I think there was an issue in the Old Testament where like his people wanted to kill him because I guess their sons had died in a war, right? And the only reason he had to deal with that burden because he was the king. So, but it said that he found strength in God. So yeah, I definitely think there's a burden that increases as you get higher and higher up, and like you said, I think that that's on purpose, so we can trust in God and not ourselves. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is when you're in more of a leadership position, it makes you appreciate like the great men of the Bible, because now as a technician, when you're like, say, let's just say junior dev, even senior dev, you're just kind of like responsible for you. It's like my contributions, I solved this problem, I'm good to go. But the higher you get, now you're responsible for other people. Like what they do, it reflects on you too. And you have to take care of them. You have to make decisions that with them in mind. So like, have you had to kind of adjust your mindset a little bit, transitioning from like more of a problem solver to more of a leader?
Yeah, to an extent, I will say that it's it's my leadership role is a little bit limited. I'm probably not as high up the ladder as you, so it's kind of a hybrid where I'm still an individual contributor, but there are some junior devs under me. I think I enjoy teaching. Like I enjoy like one of my goals. I have a junior dev under me, and I'm always like thinking to myself, like my goal is pretty much to give her whatever was given to me, right? Like all the knowledge I have, it's like, hey, my goal is just to transfer that to her, and we have another solutions engineer on our team, and I enjoy that process because it also tightens up. It keeps my skills tight as well. But yeah, there is essentially what it does is like I can't just be an IC. Like I have to be an IC and a teacher, you know, and a model. So it's just extra burden. So
So like I know sometimes in the industry people kind of look at, this person that might be a little less senior than them. Oh, this person might be a threat to me, so I'm gonna withhold knowledge, but you seem to be completely open to sharing everything you know. Um, so like, yeah, I wanted to get your opinion on like how are you able to kind of overcome the selfishness and not even worry about the potential competition and just raise up the next generation of coders after you.
I feel like to me, I feel like giving knowledge is selfish because in my mind, the more knowledge you have, then the less burden I'm gonna have. Because it's like you're autonomous. It's like a father, mother raising their son. It's like, hey, we're trying to build you up because I don't want to be, changing poopy diapers forever. It's like, you need to learn this stuff on your own. So in a sense, I feel like I think there's a reason why the Bible says it's better to give than receive because when you give, you're actually kind of being blessed, as well. So I feel like it's going to help out everyone in the end. It's a win-win. So because if you're keeping all the knowledge, then you got to keep all the burdens, and then you got to do all the work. And that's maybe some people like that, but I mean, in the end, like if you're the bottleneck, like you're going to feel that. You're going to be the one up 12 p.m., 12 a, up at night trying to fix production, and eventually you're going to get burnt out because you can't as a company scales, you can't be the bottleneck, and that's really a dangerous position because eventually they'll probably just replace you, right? Because no one's bigger than the business. So I think it's a win-win because if you're sharing knowledge sharing, you're making the company better, you're bringing more value, you're actually making yourself more valuable, because it's like, wow, this guy is helping us scale. So it's like I feel like it's a benefit. That's why I go back to the selfish. I call it a healthy selfishness because it's like it's a win-win versus just keeping it to yourself. Now it's just for you, and now you're actually in a dangerous position.
No, yeah, no, I agree with you. The more competent your team members are, like the more confidence you're going to have in the overall work because they're contributing to the code base. So if they don't know something, they're going to contribute bad code. Now you're going to have to fix it. It's going to be a constant crisis mode, and it's going to reflect on you too because you're the senior, and if you might look like the hero coming in and fixing the code, but they're gonna be questioning you as to like why is your team members like why are they always contributing this bad code? So
Right.
you know, a lesson I've learned is like if you want to be in a position, if you want to get this title, you have to somebody has to see it in you already. So you have to kind of like look like a leader. So if everybody around you, your juniors that they entrusted to you, if they're looking sloppy, they're going to be like, maybe I don't think he's really that good of a leader. So we're just going to keep him here as an individual contributor. But if everybody around you is sharp and they're always singing, like if you really raise somebody up and like say the boss talks to them about you, they're going to sing your praise like, oh, he's excellent. And, you know, by giving, God has designed a system that you're going to receive later, like,
Yep.
uh, you pour into others and it's going to come back to you. And I think that's a really interesting principle.
Yep. And they win. I think that's why they say it's better because it's like I think it's like there's more blessings going on versus just kind of this singular focus.
Exactly. So, like, what are some of the other technologies that that you're delving into? I know you started off with React and kind of the front end, but now you're touching more things. Like, what are some of the technologies you've been diving into?
Probably more Node, like really getting into performance, like kind of going down rabbit holes with kind of how Node, like blocking the event loop, like realizing that a lot of times I think when you're taking like a Node course, I think you want to skip over that and get to files and IOs and all the sexy stuff. But it's like learning how the event loop works, because if your code is blocking that, because maybe you're not using worker threads or job queues, or maybe you got a bunch of nested for loops, or just code that's just clogging it up, like that's going to affect performance. So understanding how that works, it's like key, and that goes back to that having that high level overview. Like when you're building a node, it's like I've developed like this system of like, all right, like when I have a feature, it's like, okay, do I have to worry about memory, right? Because it's like if you got a file that's too big and you're trying to put it in memory, like my understanding is like, it'll break your app. So it's like, okay, do I need to stream? Does is this feature CPU heavy? Okay, it is. Let me do a worker thread. Um, do I need to worry about using transactions with the database, right? So just having like I'm learning as I'm reading and growing. It's like having like a system for building out features and critical systems. And I think that that's really necessary as you kind of, like I said, if you want to get to that kind of high level kind of systems engineer versus just like, oh, let me just do this little React new thingy. Like, I'll be honest, I love me some React, but I want to get out of that React 19 little new thingy. It's like, I mean, I'll keep up with it, but I'm more interested in like the stuff I just discussed, like making sure the engine is running well. So
Yeah, I kind of feel like once you get to like 80% or 90% of general proficiency with something, it's time to start moving on. Let's just say you done React for a couple of years and you're just solidly competent. You might not be the ultra master at it, but I think it's more beneficial to your career to move on to the next thing versus trying to spend the next years chasing that final 10% or 15%. Because what if they say, hey, there's this new framework where we're dumping React, we're going to this new framework, and now you're stuck with that. So if you have a wheelhouse of multiple tools, and I think you mentioned something else really important was like, don't just chase the sexy stuff, like chase the foundational knowledge that everything else is built on. Because
yeah,
I think most people they're kind of taking the easy way out. Like they want to use these like AI tools, and they don't really want to understand what's generated to the deep levels. And that's really what's going to set you apart. 'Cause when things go wrong, they're not going to be able to fix it. But if you understand like at a deep level what's going on, you have an advantage that most others don't have.
yeah, and that's what I'm banking on. It's tough because I'm seeing AI this, AI that, but I do believe that, like you said, if everyone is turning into an abstracted developer, because that's what AI is going to do, and I'm kind of just thinking about this in real time. And I and me or yourself is a deep level engineer where we understand it. Like I feel like that's going to set us apart. Kind of reminds me of Pharrell and the Neptunes. So what they did, what was kind of super unique, is like a lot of people, like if you make beats, like a lot of people are always trying to take the original sound and are always trying to like muddy it up, change it, do something. But they just kept using stock sounds and set them apart because no one wanted to use the stock sounds. So it's like it's kind of the same thing with this. It's like everyone wants to do AI, um, but then if you're like, hey, I want to stick to like the fundamentals of just deep knowledge and how things work, then it's like, yeah, you're going to be set apart. And like you said, if everyone is abstracted, then when something breaks, they have to call on you.
Exactly. And if they can only work at the high level, because like to me AI is just almost like another programming language. Like programming language is you're essentially giving an instruction to a machine to tell it to do some unit of work. With AI, it's doing a lot more units of work together
Right.
in one fell swoop. But yeah, if you don't understand at a more granular level, then you're going to be limited in the kind of solutions you can provide because you don't have that core technical understanding.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of stuff I can't do because I don't have a deep understanding of math, and that's
Yep.
foundational for programming.
Yep. Yep. I agree.
So, like, how are you directing your learning? Like, I know you mentioned Node, but like, what are some of the other foundational subjects that you're exploring, and what are the resources you're using to get your knowledge up?
So let me actually. It's actually a good question. For Node, I like this one guy. Let me. I want to make sure I get his name right. He has some really good stuff. I don't know why more prevalent online. Corey Clary, like he has a lot of good posts on Node and Express. I think I said earlier I was taking AWS course from this guy named Adrian Contrell. Full disclosure, he has some polarizing views right now because I guess he's said some stuff, done some stuff, hasn't updated some of his stuff. But from my experience, I'm getting a lot of value from his stuff. And he's kind of known to kind of go deep with AWS, so you can check him out. Tower Node was another good one that I use. Those are probably some of my main ones that I use, especially if you want to learn how to architect the sort of your whole Node app and keeping it modular and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I'm just kind of all over the place right now. I'm kind of, I know obsessed is not a healthy word, but I'm kind of just obsessed right now. So I'm just, or I should say, I'm immersed. Like I'm just constantly reading, thinking, understanding. Because while coding is great, you need a certain level of insight in models to guide your coding, right? Like through all the reading and just in some tinkering, like I've developed, like I said, a system for coding and thinking, because that's really what you want when you're coding is you really want a system. Like you want to be able to say, hey, I'm building this feature, what are the things I need to think about, right? For like I'm supposed to be building like a payment processing system, so through learning stuff through LinkedIn, even like I like to go down rabbit holes. I'll see someone talk about something that I know nothing about. I go down that rabbit hole. Like for instance, with the payment processing, like I never really realized that you should put payment processing in a job queue with Node because you want that retriability if something happens. I didn't know that. So just being curious and just being kind of obsessed and immersed really helps.
Yeah, I think just challenging yourself and just being curious, like you mentioned, those are really important because it's easy to get complacent. Let's just say, okay, you're a React developer, you're getting jobs easy right now, and now you can kind of coast, like you feel like you can coast, but the industry can shift super quickly. So, boom, the React jobs are gone, and now you're left in a situation where you have to do something else. So, like you going down these rabbit holes, you spending your time outside of work, challenging yourself and continue to learn. That's like incredibly important in this industry. Like if you were to tell like a junior developer, like somebody you were mentoring, and they were starting to get complacent, like how would you warn them about the dangers of complacency?
I guess one of the things I'd like to do is kind of use an analogy. And I mean, I guess it would be like your body. Like we all know if you're complacent with your body, like in the beginning, like when you're young, you can do it because, that's just how the body works. But, if you're complacent with your health, like eventually stuff just starts breaking down, right? Muscles start getting tight. You go bend down and you just tweak your back. You go to lift something that's relatively heavy and you pull a muscle. So it's a risk, right? Complacency is a risk. And if you want to live your life like that, like those are just the consequences. Maybe you'll be one of those people that's like, hey, I can just coast. Like some people, hey, some people got it like that. But excuse me. But that's not, my thing is, like the Bible talks about walking in knowledge. It's like if you know that if I give myself the most amount of knowledge and skills, I'll set myself up for the best situation. It's like, why not? You know,
Yeah, I think especially as the economy becomes more and more challenging, what we have to start preparing ourselves for. Obviously you have faith in God. You believe Jesus will give you the path forward, but you also have to walk the journey. Like when the Israelites were in the promised land, or God was guiding them to the promised land, God didn't just immediately like transport them there. They had to walk to it and have faith.
Yep.
So like we have to continuously labor. We have to continuously walk towards, the proverbial promised land by having faith but putting in effort. And yeah, I think now is the time where you can't be complacent because the economy's tightening up, and you're going to have the skills to be able to provide values to companies to be able to stay employed. And I think the path you're taking by breaking out of the like the front end engineer box, that's really important because with all of the AI stuff coming down the pipeline, I'm not sure that we can just be so rigidly defined anymore as we used to. It's like, how are we able to provide this
And just kind
cohesive
of piggyback on,
solution?
right. I didn't mean to cut you off. You just your thought when you were talking about kind of walking with God, like kind of triggered a thought. Like in Proverbs, even says, "You see a man skilled in his work, he will be stationed in the presence of kings." And then if you read in the Bible, I think like Solomon was having a conversation with these. I forgot the name of the other king. They were like really good at like super skilled at building like wood, I guess, like making wood. And he like in that letter, he was like, "I'll pay you whatever you want." So to me, I've always like if you really want to, be wealthy, I think it just starts with having really, really good skills and being really, really good at something. So and it's hard to be good at something if you're complacent.
Exactly. Like, I mean, certain people, yeah, they can be gifted a great amount of talent, but if they're not constantly cultivating it, they're never gonna really, rise to the heights that they can. And Proverbs, I believe Solomon wrote that, and that's speaking from the perspective of a king. So like him
Yeah,
talking about laborers, and that's letting like what somebody from that stature, what they're looking at in terms of who they want to work with, who they want to reach out to. So
that's a good point.
if you want to continue to rise, they have to be able to look at you and see that you have this expertise, you have this level of wisdom that can help give them counsel or help them build whatever they're trying to build.
Yep, that's a good point. Great point.
So I know, like, you've been staying active on LinkedIn. Can you? I haven't been as active. I need to get back into it. But can you like just speak to the benefits of being active and continue to build your community even after you've got the job?
So I think if I'm being honest, when I first started LinkedIn, I was just like, I just want to have good conversations. Eventually, that turned into getting job leads, and then kind of post kind of my full time gig. My attitude was like, I just want to use it as an asset. Like, if I can't make money off of it, then it's like I'm not too motivated. But I feel like God's showing me that it doesn't have to just be an asset for myself. I've noticed that my spiritual posts seem to help a lot of people of faith who are in tech. So I'm not really right. If I'm being honest, I'm pretty much freestyling LinkedIn. Like I don't really have a system. It's like I have my moments where I'm consistent and then I don't. So I'm freestyling it. But I'm noticing that it can kind of be whatever God wants it to be. And right now I'm finding that people are being helped with kind of more of the spiritual posts. So it's one of those things. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is doing something I heard Gary Vee say, and he said the idea of social media is over. He calls it interest media. So it's like just whatever you're interested in, just put it out there. So I'm thinking of changing my LinkedIn tag where I'm going to probably say like, hey, I talk about tech, faith, and how they all connect. Right. I'm just going to start talking about I think things that are genuine and true to me. So I may be talking about Node in one post, and then I might be talking about Proverbs in another. I might be talking about fitness, and as far as I'm concerned, they all work together, right? My faith and fitness, all and tech, like they work together.
Yeah, I think you know conducting interviews with people from a variety of fields like voiceover, like even like marketing and just different things. They all keep coming back to the point that nowadays people are seeking authenticity. And
Yeah,
you can't necessarily be authentic if you're rigidly defined to this like system of posting. People can kind of tell like, oh, he's probably using some AI generated text, or he's speaking from a template. I mean, people do respond to that, but you're kind of limiting yourself. If what you're doing can be like rigidly defined by some formula, then the AI, the computer can do that. So how long term wise, like sustainability wise, if you're operating based off of a formula that versus the one thing that God gave you that nobody else has, which is your own like personality,
Yep.
um, it's going to be harder for you to connect with people going forward. So that's a great point that you kind of freestyle. Like, when you say freestyle, it's like you expressing what's in you versus trying to push this targeted agenda.
Yep. And yeah, and I'm trying to find that balance between being authentic but then having systems. But I just haven't found it yet. If I'm being honest, I think with work and trying to get better, that's probably like my main. That takes up a lot of energy. So, but hopefully, I'll get a clear, defined vision and schedule to where I can be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I think my struggles on LinkedIn is like trying to, I guess, maybe being focused on the metrics and uh, trying to think of, okay, is this going to be a home run post or whatever versus just posting something interesting. And I know like
Yeah.
how a lot of these social media algorithms work these days is like it kind of averages out your posts, and if you're doing really good, it's going to show more of it. But if your past few posts bomb, is going to kind of hide your reach. So I think you know, being genuine, but also having to dance for the algorithm. That's kind of the struggle there.
Yep. I was just thinking as you were talking about that, like I'm wondering if it's one of those things where it's like you have to take each post and kind of give it a purpose. It's like, hey, my spiritual post is strictly to edify the body, right? Then maybe post on Node is just to kind of set myself up as a technical thought leader. And then maybe another post on fitness is just to show, just to, just maybe personal branding, like, hey, this is just kind of who I am and personality. So I think it's sort of like deploying each post, but like, hey, this your task with this.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, having a social media strategy is important nowadays because if you're just blasting stuff out, then you're just, they're going to limit your reach because, if it's not hooking people, if they're not responding to it, then they're not going to showcase your stuff anymore. So, yeah, I think studying the algorithm, like what captivates the audience to be able to convey your message, that's really important because you can have the best message in the world, the greatest advice, but if nobody's looking at it, nobody's interacting with it, then you're not affecting anybody. So I think that's the other part of the leadership equation is I have this great thing to offer you, but how do I make you interested in wanting to consume it?
Yeah, I think telling stories works. I think
Yeah.
telling that's something too. I think I want to tap into. It's like just posting things where it's like, hey, actual legitimate stories. Because I think when you have a story that people can connect with, I think a lot of times those things go viral. So
Yeah. Now, I think we're in like a really interesting place as technologists because traditionally technologists have more like the rigid engineer sort of mind. I guess that's like left brain logical. You just want to get a problem, you solve it, and go home. But now it's like, okay, that's like maybe 50% of the job, but the other half is almost being like an expert communicator, entertainer, leader. Like you have to pretty much be on some form of social media and get eyes on you in order to have like some level of I guess stability. Because if all you do is just go to work and leave, and then you don't do anything on LinkedIn, and you get let go, there the jobs are not nearly as plentiful as they used to be. So who is the company most likely going to reach out to? The thought leader who's on LinkedIn regularly
yep,
posting like deep thoughts, or just this guy who has no kind of post history or anything?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Giving yourself the best chance. Yeah. That just goes back to kind of diversifying your time and talent. So,
So I know, like, right now you're kind of like headed towards the direction of like a solutions architect. So like, how are you preparing for that, and how are you also like increasing your leadership skills? How are you working on becoming a better leader, and being able to guide your teammates more effectively and efficiently in order to be able to deliver this solution?
pretty much just embracing the role that I have as senior engineer. Just being willing to be that servant leader, teaching, giving up, knowledge sharing, being more of a infrastructure guy, and I mean that figuratively and literally. Obviously, setting up like AWS, but also too setting things up for the team to where it's like maybe having a technical doc that everyone can reference, and kind of just doing more of the high level stuff that I've seen other senior engineers do. So whether it's setting up systems in the code, or even systems related to maybe even technical admin stuff, just kind of being that person that kind of gives everyone that kind of foundation to kind of work on. And that's the nice thing about being under senior engineers. That's one of the lessons I learned was they set up systems, whether it's, you know, excuse me, whether it's like something as simple as like a style sheet, right? Setting up a theme style, some type of design theme style for the whole app, or setting up the folder structure, things like that. That a lot of times when you're a junior, you're like you just code, but not realizing there's all these kind of underlying systems that you're coding into. So that's one of the biggest things I learned. So trying to take that and implement that.
Yeah, I think what I'm also learning, like you kind of mentioned, as a junior, they're more focused on solving the immediate problem at hand, but to continually progress and to deliver more value, to move up, you got to take a step back. You have to look at the bigger picture. Like, what is the context of your work? Okay, you're
Yep.
working on this tiny sliver, but how is the whole system working together? And how can you facilitate it to continually operate smoothly, effectively, and efficiently? And I think, like, as a leader, it's like, how can, like you mentioned, like you're teaching them, you're giving your coworkers knowledge, you're helping them understand. But like, I think at a certain point, as a leader, we're not going to know everything about this particular product. So we're going to have to trust our teammates that they're going to be able to pick it up on their own, and bring that insight to us. And I think that's one of the more interesting parts of leadership, is like, you can't do it all yourself, and it makes you vulnerable. So you have to trust, like, have faith in your teammates. Like, has that been an easy process for you, or is that something you're still kind of working through and getting accustomed to?
No, because I'm lazy, so I don't want to have to do it all. And when I say I'm lazy, I mean that like a healthy lazy, where it's like if you got like this juniors I'm working with, like they have a really good knack for like UI UX. I'm aware of certain things, and I know when you're building out certain things, you need to think about how are these things traditionally built out. But like they're like super, like they just have a knack for that. Where I'm like awesome, because then I don't have to worry about thinking about that. It's like, hey, I could focus on this payment system, making sure that it's going to scale, because that's what I'm passionate about right now. That's what I'm thinking about. I don't really care about UI UX. Like I want to learn. I'm curious about it, but if you force my hand, like that's lower. That's lower for me. Like I'm more focused on like the system and making sure, like, hey, when a million people hit this site, is it gonna hold up, right? Is it gonna be performing fast? That's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm passionate about right now. It's scary to think because I haven't built a site where a million people are on, but I want that skill set where I'm focusing on that. Like, hey, is this payment processor going to, if it crashes and comes back up, like, is everything going to work right? Are people going to get double payments? So I want to think more about that stuff and not so much about the perfect UI UX. So it's kind of, I think there's kind of a good balance that we have since they're really good at that. I'm like, hey, I'll let them, make those decisions. Of course, I want to learn from them. I want to learn as much as I can, but to me, I'll let that be the minor, and I want to major in the kind of engine of the app.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, a lot of people think front end engineers were kind of designers as well, and we love like picking colors and making this button this color and matching it. But I really don't like doing it. I don't like design at all. I'm more into like designing systems, watching the data flow through, and making sure everything works as they should. So I think
Yeah.
even though you started at the front end, and same with me, we're not necessarily what most would picture as front end engineers. We're more, I would say, like even back, like our mindset, I guess, would fit kind of better on the back end, but we
Yeah.
started on the front end, or even designing a full cohesive system. And like you mentioned, having somebody who does have that different mindset, that's powerful because they can handle that aspect that you don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
But okay, so like with you being senior, you got to kind of rein them in and push them towards the overarching vision. So like, even though they're more of the expert in that area, how are you able to keep them in alignment with like the higher vision? Because sometimes when somebody's good, they can go off and try to do their own thing versus like the intended agenda.
Well, that's probably a little bit outside of my paycheck. I feel like that's where sort of like the more I would say, because we have like a kind of a head of engineering. So for me, in my mind, I feel like he would probably kind of make that decision as far as like who's going to go where. Because he does kind of give us the freedom to like one of the things he wants from us is like, hey, what is your goal, right? So I don't think he's the type to be like, hey, if you just love front end and design and that's what you want to do. I feel like he's the type to be like, all right, like if the opportunity's there, that's what we're going to do. Like I already told him, I'm trying to be end to end. Like I just want to be able to navigate like wherever you put me. I might not be a ninja per se at every part of the system, but I want to be functional and reliable and be able to build like robust systems regardless, and just know what I'm doing or be willing to learn to grow. So I think that's a little bit, if I'm being honest, I feel like that would be right now in the position I'm in, that would be kind of outside of my pay grade. But ideally, I would want to push people to be an end-to-end engineer because I feel like that's where we're at. I don't feel like we have. I mean, I'm sure there's gonna probably be a need for niche specialists, but I'm gonna be honest. Like, I don't think it's safe to try to specialize right now.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I remember I was at a networking event and this guy had like someone that was super, super like front end heavy and CSS heavy, but he needed someone to build out like systems, back end infrastructure with AI, and that person couldn't do it. And my mind is just like that's my bread and butter. Like that's the stuff I want to do. That's the stuff I want to wrestle with. Because that's the heart of an app. It's not as much as UI UX is important. At the end of the day, like people just want performant and safe apps, right? Like you can
yeah,
make an app as pretty as you want, but if it's slow, or if it's unsafe, or word gets out that this app is unsafe and leaking data and passwords aren't hashed, and it's like no one's going to care. So I want to get to the heart of a system.
yeah. No, I definitely agree. And like you mentioned, it's I think there's like phases of your career. Like okay, you're first getting in, and you want to get to like the senior level. So then it might pay to specialize in something so that you look really good at it. But then once you've gotten to a certain level, now it's time to expand and not just be so rigidly focused. So now you might be less in React now, but you have a big cohesive view of the whole system, DevOps, cybersecurity, networking, etc. And
Yep.
while you're not the one specialist, your ability to see the whole system, you can make choices, you can do things that specialists can't because they're kind of stuck in their silo, they're stuck in that singular wheelhouse, whereas you can reach out to these specialists and bring them together and get
Yep.
them to do things. So no, that's really interesting that you're on that path, whereas some people just prefer staying in that original path. So like going forward, do you want to be more of a, like, I guess, like an architect position, or I'll say more of a like a managerial, like hands-on, like leadership, but less technical position?
Right now, I'm in a very like I'm super hungry for technical. Like I said, I'm kind of in a immersive, just like because I want to like a lot of stuff I'm studying. I've heard like debates on LinkedIn, and I'm like, I didn't know what these guys were talking about, but I'm slowly pulling back that onion, and I'm like, oh, that's what this is. Like even the idea of a microservice, it's like I kind of got it, but then I saw a video of a guy kind of explaining, how Kubernetes works and having these different containers talking to each other, and I'm like, oh, those are microservices. So it's like I'm really hungry for that super technical side right now. Like I'm like I just want to grind and train, hit those pads, hit the mitts, continue to code and solve big heavy problems. um, Maybe I'll move on to the manager position, but there's right now I really want to like just keep building things. If I'm being honest, like I could see me probably being on this path for the next few years, and once I kind of get my feet wet with some really heavy production, systems and the type of systems where it's like hundreds of thousands or a million users, and really understanding that because there's a difference between a regular to-do app and then a million users using your app, right? And I'm learning the difference. And as I'm uncovering stuff, it's like I'm kind of hungry for more and more. Little things like even using like the Motor package. It's like you can use that for a personal project, but like there's certain settings that if you don't change, like streaming, like it's not going to work for a million users. So being aware of that type of stuff, like that's where I'm really curious about, and just trying to go, just keep digging and really trying to peel back this onion and understanding how production apps really work instead of just kind of staying in that kind of tight little, this one little feature and this one little new React thingy, and nothing wrong with that. Like that stuff is good, but I want to get beyond that and get into like millions of users hitting this app. It's like how do you architect and construct this in a way that's going to not fold under pressure.
Exactly. And as you start designing that, I think that you're going to end up having like less specific domain knowledge, and yeah, you're going to have like more general knowledge of a lot of different things, but that's also going to force you to rely more on your teammates, and you're going to have to guide them to be able to build these systems, because I don't know of any, like, large scale app that was just built by one person. It's a bunch of people working together with all of their different expertises. And I kind of think like that's almost coding on a human level. Like instead of giving instructions to machines, you're giving instructions to humans. And
Right.
machines are precise. You put in X, you get out Y, just about every time, whereas with humans, you give them instructions and maybe you get what you asked for, or maybe you get something worse, or maybe you get something better. So I think kind of learning to lead both man and machine together, that's sort of the the skill set that we do need to cultivate to really be able to move up in this tech industry.
Yep. I agree.
So like from the human side of like just enhancing the productivity of your team, of really ensuring that they're able to do what's expected, like have you started thinking about ways that you can really do that, like you as a leader of a team?
Yeah, it's just learning the proper tools. Like I told you, right now I'm just kind of obsessed with stuff. So it's funny you said that. I was literally thinking about Docker Compose and how I want to kind of use that to build images because that streamlines the the kind of startup process, right? When you're trying to take a kind of code base and bring it out locally, sometimes you got people with different systems, different operating systems. So it's like the whole well works on my machine kind of mean So learning stuff like Docker Compose, because I just recently learned like that's really good. Well, I was aware of it, but I saw a video that kind of really brought it home. Where if you turn your apps into images, now it's like Docker kind of makes things kind of homogenous to where it's like, hey, it's going to work in any environment. So you don't have to worry about that spin up time and trying to set up databases. It's like just use images, get Docker. Everyone uses images and it's all going to work. So just finding the right tools to streamline things and understanding why you use these tools. And again, that's kind of those are the type of things I'm interested in, is those kind of that infrastructure kind of
Yeah.
systems.
So basically, you want to design a system where there's consistency in tools, and everybody's on the same page. They spin up this image, and they have the same version of VS Code that everybody else is using, and
Right.
you don't run into the problem of, oh, it's working on my machine, but it's not working on my machine.
Right.
And what about like are you like kind of like designing any kind of curriculum for onboarding juniors to quickly make sure that they know what they're supposed to do, and they can become like efficient at editing the code base as quickly as possible?
Oh no, but that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, because that's actually a skill set. That's one of the first skills I learned from a senior was, VS Code. Instead of going through all the file folders, it's like you could just search. What is it? I can't. My fingers know, but my mind doesn't. Like Shift Command and all that stuff to find stuff. So yeah, I mean that's definitely something to add, having those kind of documents, because in my mind, like that's just kind of basic. But again, I learned that, so to me right now, to me it's basic, but at the time I wasn't aware of those kind of hotkeys and that efficiency of like using your tool the right way. So
Yeah, like what are some of the more important lessons these seniors they imparted onto you that you kind of hope to pass on to your team members over time?
systems, building systems before you code. So whether that's creating your component systems with React, using hooks, having an API layer so you don't have coupled code, setting up your design system. So if the company color changes to blue to red, you just change it in one spot, versus trying to change it all over the place. So setting up systems, of course, dry, solid. You'd be surprised. I think when I first learned React, I thought, well, I would just take like this is how like noob I was. I would just take like just segment of codes and just reuse that. Not because it was like repeatable. It was just like, oh, it's a segment of code. So that just goes to show you how green I was, versus like, oh, you're copy and pasting 1,000 times. It's like, oh, let's make a component. Single responsibility and kind of decoupling your code and making sure you don't have functions that are half a novel, right? Which I've seen in code bases, but so just basic principles like that. Asking what if. A lot of times you'll do something and you just think it works, but you don't think about, well, what if the user decides to like type 1,000 things in this React Native text input? Like, is it going to expand? How is it going to look? So stuff like that, asking what if, happy path, sad path, thinking about edge cases, not fragile code. Like, I mean, for example, um, instead of using something like a ID to determine if something exists, maybe you use a email. But what if that email changes? Now your code's gonna break, so it's fragile. So teaching me about fragile code, thinking through my code, like instead of like actually thinking about it line by line, like how is this computer processing it versus reading like a book, actually thinking about the code. um yeah, just off the top of my head, stuff like that. Oh, the
Yeah,
fundamentals, right? Like
yeah,
I was doing just crazy things that are just like something as little as like with CSS, like you can sometimes you might have two elements and they're sharing the same styling when you can just use the div, right? Use the parent div and it'll just they're inherited. So as simple as that sounds, people, that attention to details and having those strong fundamentals, they taught me a lot like that. So
yeah. And with the proliferation of all this AI generated code, it really makes me wonder. is the code that's being generated, are they adhering to sound engineering principles? Like, and somebody has to understand what sound engineering principles are in order to be able to assess whether this code is, sound, like whether it's tightly coupled or not, whether there's a lot of code duplication, so on and so forth. So, I think that the industry may start moving away from, like, there's going to be less of writing of code and more so auditing and
Yep.
understanding principles. And I think that's kind of the direction of the industry.
Yeah, that might be a whole new line of work where it's like, hey, you're just an auditor, and but you won't be a good auditor unless you were a good engineer to begin with and understand these principles. And that's why, like, I think reading right now and
Yeah.
understanding principles and understanding why and when. And even if, some people may say, oh, you still need to tinker with it. Sure, I do agree with that. But reading, like, to me, AI has made reading and understanding when and why that much more powerful, because the AI will do the how, So if
Right.
you understand when and why, and you know how to test it and you can validate it, it's like, yes, if I can get in there, the only reason to tinker is just to increase your understanding, So that still goes back to that, just knowing when and how. And it's just about software IQ, which is something I preach on LinkedIn. Like, that's really what you want to just keep. It's just make sure your software IQ is high, regardless of AI or not, because that's what's going to be important.
Yeah, I think like how I look at it, like AI is almost like, okay, you're shipping you're shipping your requirements to maybe an overseas team on like Fiverr or whatever, and you're getting something back like a lot quicker than you would if like it was a bunch of humans doing it. But you still have to be able to assess whether this is quality code, whether it's safe code, whether it's doing what it's supposed to do. I think a lot of CEOs are kind of making a mistake that they think that AI is just going to solve like all areas of tech problems, and you can just get rid of the humans. And that's putting yourself in a role to where you're anticipating, you know, what these companies will eventually need, which is somebody who understands the output. And I think that's, where engineers really should be positioning themselves.
Yep. Yeah, that
And we're
security
kind
too.
of
Like,
getting. Oh, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I guess last point before we wrap it up, like, that security, that's another thing too. I'm learning is like, you don't have to be a security expert, but I think there's a layer of security that web, developers, application developers, mobile developers can learn to keep your app safe. Because I think that that's something that's going to be probably pretty valuable here, as AI is putting out more and more code. Is if you can secure people's apps, I think that's going to be a pretty good skill to have as well.
Absolutely, man. We're at the top of the hour, man. It was fantastic having you back on, man. Before we get out of here, where can our audience find you, and what closing thoughts did you want to leave them with?
LinkedIn, Devontae Moore. I also work for, I'm partnered with a company called Borough Dev Agency, BORO Dev Agency. Talk to Kurt Willis if you need a project or anything like that. And yeah, those are probably the kind of the two main ways you can probably connect with me.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I appreciate you stopping by again.
I appreciate you.